This is Ed Stewart. Ed is the curator at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. He knows a thing or two about real spaceships. But what does he know about the fictional variety and how they measure up to the real thing? This is Curator VX.
That is almost like Sasquatch in the woods kind of imagery there. So what I see when I look at it is looks like we've got kind of a main fuselage, something that looks a little bit like wings, and something that looks kind of like a vertical stabilizer, although it could be like a con tower kind of a deal. The angle wingtip looks a little bit like what does it make me think of? Like the Romulan birds of prey that had the like downward tilted nacelles, sort of. You know, depending on how big the ship is, the whole wings thing might be really impractical in terms of like re-entering atmosphere, so I don't know. And so this is the like upgraded version. Definitely very saucery in the like the mid body for sure, and like the front end of it. Very heavily Star Trek inspired for sure. It doesn't have a lot of features that make it obvious that something is a particular thing or a particular function. What I thought was a vertical stabilizer looks a lot more like a con tower or an equipment area or something like that. The wings still look very much like wings, even though this is a little bit maybe a little more sleeker, a little more refined, a little more detail to the ship. The wings seem more like vestigial, like maybe a place to put like a weapons system far out from the center of the body or something like that, as opposed to being like a real control surface or something. Nice looking ship, feels like a clumsy interpretation of a Star Trek ship. Oh wow, very sci-fi, much swoosh. Definitely looks like it would be something that would be ion engine powered. You know, you kind of have that bright bluish white glow. So depending on what gas you were using to ionize and kind of kick out the back end of the engine, it fits with that vibe. Clearly, they're looking for some sort of real like fast moving thing, which ion propulsion is real good for like long-term acceleration, but not good for like high acceleration over short periods of time. It's from a like real life usability perspective, there's not a lot there. Oh, the Red Dwarf. Oh, so the Red Dwarf has cannon, but it's very soft. I have a soft spot in my heart for the Red Dwarf. I believe I watched them when I was right out of college and they were still running like marathons of television shows on Sci-Fi Channel. And that ship has an unknown number of floors, an unknown number of systems, and very smart aleck holograms. It had everything that you need. It had rec areas, it had, you know, a galley, it had life support systems, it even had a little like landing craft, which at one point became the main form of transportation in the show. But I don't ever recall them talking about a propulsion system or anything like that. So the one thing I will say is the ship clearly had some longevity, because kind of the main premise is, of course, something terrible happens. Everybody dies except for Rimmer. So Rimmer survives, Lester becomes a hologram. The ship's cats plural, eventually evolve into a very sort of spicy 1970s disco dancer, which is really, really funny. Could a ship last that long out in deep space? Maybe. Red Dwarf, by the time we see it, clearly has a lot of problems. Space mining is a thing that we're actually really talking about now. So in terms of function, that's definitely a realistic concept to go out, attach yourself to an asteroid and mine it for resources, or bring it to a spot where you could then mine it for resources. Yeah, but great ship. Love it. Starbug is interesting to me because it reminds me a little bit of the pods from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Just a little bit. It has some like elements of that, but it's clearly also very sort of insect inspired because it's got the articulated landing legs and everything. It definitely looks like it's designed to land on a surface with those legs kind of sticking out. It clearly seems to be at least a little bit inspired by the legs on the lunar module. The design of the body is super interesting because it's basically three spheres sort of connected to each other, and really the sort of best shape to hold pressure, withstand pressure, is a spherical shape. So that's definitely sort of a positive, sort of practical aspect of it. The only thing that really kind of sticks out at me is I don't see anything that looks like a braking system for when you slow down coming in. So it'd have to be some sort of like anti-gravity drive, because it doesn't look like it's set up to go through re-entry, especially not with the legs sticking out the way they are. Like, if you go through an atmospheric re-entry with those legs sticking out, you're going to be legless by the time you get to the ground. And like, I don't see like retro rockets or anything like that. They might be tucked away under there, maybe. So some red flags, but some also very practical elements of it too. So all in all, I'd rate it a 6 out of 10 on the reality scale. Is that a Vogon? Oh, that is a Vogon constructor. So I don't even care as long as they don't read me any poetry. Yeah, so these are super interesting to me. So basically like big rectangles. They don't have any like visible propulsion system that you can see. They don't talk about the propulsion system. Not a lot of canon here in terms of the technology. The scale is massive because of course they're kind of made to be like planet crunchers so that they could make way for the intergalactic highway that was about to come through. When you see the interiors, they're just everything you would hope a Vogon ship would be, just sort of damp and musty looking. As far as planet destroyers go, I'll give it an 8 out of 10. If like the Death Star is a 10 out of 10, I'll give that an 8 out of 10. It is menacing. It has hints of Borg cube, but there's no real precedent from a technological standpoint for like a realistic version of it. The closest thing that I can even think of was this idea for a weapon system that was called, I don't remember its actual name, but the nickname for the program was Rods from God, because it was basically dropping like giant beryllium, I think rods, directly into atmosphere with no propulsion system, but they'd hit like terminal velocity and cause huge amounts of damage just because of their mass. So if it's kind of based around that principle, I can kind of see where they're coming from, but also there's living organisms on board, so fast, high energy impacts onto a surface seems like a bad idea. So I'm going to give it a 0 out of 10 for realistic, functionality. The Heart of Gold. It's powered by the improbability drive. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek take on the idea of quantum mechanics and like the fact that quantum mechanics relies so much on probability for certain aspects of it. It like spins up and it's like a rubber ducky at one point, and it's a bowl of soup at one point. It's all kinds of like random things before it disappears and then reappears in its new location. So definitely kind of a like warp drivey, quantum mechanical sort of thing. It's again really primarily spherical, so good shape as far as being a pressure vessel. It has the big aperture in the front that is disturbing to look at. It has clearly a little set of windows for sort of a viewing port, which is nice. And then it has sort of like an airfoil on the back. It almost looks like a handle that you would like hold it by. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But again, like it's such an absurd design. It's so wonderful.
It also has brake lights.
Oh, that's right. It does have brake lights. I mean, that's important when you're going that fast at orbital velocity. You want to let the guy behind you know that you're slowing down.
This is it, ladies and gentlemen. We are at war.
Oh, so these are the Dalek saucers. This is a classic design. It's very like 1950s flying saucer, just, retro UFO kind of look to them. Again, there's a lot of canon with the Daleks, but they don't talk about their technology all that much. It's really more focused on the little soft squishy things inside the Dalek shells and wanting to exterminate everything. So great design. If I remember right, the saucer section does spin around that sort of central sort of sphere. There have been flying saucers in real life in terms of like round disc-shaped aircraft that have had, like propeller-driven propulsion systems. Like we're going back like pre-jet age kind of things. but nothing that has ever been able to go out into space. So it's a completely fictional drive system. The aerodynamics of a disc are fine, but the way that they kind of move around is definitely not, like, they don't fly like a Frisbee. They fly like they have some sort of magical propulsion system that keeps them from having to just plunge down at the planet below at the acceleration of gravity. So classic design, not at all practical, which is good. Maybe that's what's keeping them from actually invading and exterminating us all. Oh, and this is the impact drive from the first of the 60th anniversary specials. It's an interesting design to me because it's sort of a vertical takeoff, vertical landing design. So very SpaceX-y, New Shepard, all that sort of stuff. It definitely has like landing legs that seem to come out from where the sort of fin structure. What's super interesting about it is it's kind of like taking a little bit of right now and the retro rocket landing systems that we're currently using, and also marrying it a little bit with sort of a 1950s aesthetic, but it's also sort of biological feeling too. Like it's got lots of lumps and sort of, modules that sort of stick off. So just kind of looking at it sitting there, it doesn't seem like an incredibly impractical design. And then the propulsion system is super interesting because it somehow taps into the energy produced by the core of the planet that it's sitting on, and then uses that energy to kind of kick itself back off and recharge itself, but in the process destroying the planet that it's landing on, or at least a major section of the planet. The idea of sort of like the planet killer, which you see across a lot of sci-fi is very interesting. The idea of tapping into like the core of a planet to absorb its energy, if you could do that, you could certainly capture a lot of energy. You'd have to have some really great batteries of some kind to store it. But then what's puzzling about it is when you take off, you're expelling such a large amount of that energy that you're really doing a lot of damage to the surface of the planet. So it's a little bit counterproductive because you're wasting a lot of that energy that you think you would want to keep just to get yourself off the ground. So, I don't know, kind of some weird things about it for sure. And the TARDIS. It's bigger on the inside. The TARDIS has a temper. The TARDIS behaves only when it feels like it. Apparently, its chameleon circuit has been stuck since 1960 something, so it always looks like a blue police phone box. If I had one, I'd love it. It is equal parts magic and technology, and that's about all I can say about it, because you can't really top it.